Shalom. I'm Eddie Chumney of Hebraic Heritage Ministries, and we welcome you to this week's Focus Israel Report. In this week's report, we're going to be sharing with you regarding the current status of the Israeli-Palestinian peace process, and it is as follows. The Arab League announced its support for the Palestinian refusal to meet Israel's demand to be recognized as a Jewish state by saying, "The Arab League expresses our total rejection of the call to consider Israel as a Jewish state." Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has called for the Palestinians to recognize the Jewish character of Israel as a requirement for a peace agreement. At the meeting, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas reiterated his refusal to recognize Israel as a Jewish state and said that the Palestinians want an independent state on all the territories that were occupied in 1967. The London-based Arabic newspaper quoted Western diplomats as saying that U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry was trying to overcome the impasse over the recognition of Israel as a Jewish state by changing the definition to the homeland of the Jewish people. In return, the Palestinians would have to agree to a Palestinian capital in a part of East Jerusalem and not all of it. According to the report, the Palestinians have rejected this proposal. In response, a senior Israeli official said that the Palestinians are destroying any chance of reaching a peace agreement. The official said, "President Abbas's stubborn refusal to discuss mutual recognition between the two nation-states stands in stark contrast with Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's willingness to recognize a Palestinian state and his agreement that all of the core issues can be raised in the talks. By clinging to his position, Abbas could well torpedo the peace process," the Israeli official said. Israel's former National Security Advisor said that the Palestinians have not moved 1 inch in their negotiating position since 1994, while the Netanyahu government has made dramatic concessions unacknowledged by world opinion. In fact, in certain areas, Israel even moved backward. The retired Israeli general highlighted 2 issues where Israel made a dramatic move toward the Palestinians. Number 1, accepting a Palestinian state, while former Israel Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin only agreed to less than a state. And number 2, limiting the Israeli military presence in the Jordan Valley to the Jordan River, while Rabin envisioned the entire valley under Israeli control. On the latter issue, the United States didn't even notice the difference until Israel turned their attention to it. In the past, Israel has accepted the principle of land swaps with the Palestinians in the ratio of 1-to-1 for inhabited areas in the West Bank annexed by Israel, a principle Rabin never envisioned, he said. Tactically, Israel has agreed in the past years to undertake goodwill measures intended to advance negotiations, such as a freeze on settlement construction in 2010 and the release of Palestinian prisoners with blood on their hands. From a diplomatic point of view, I know of not one Palestinian concession since the start of negotiations until today, he said. The Palestinians have a clear line. They want a Palestinian state on the 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. Everything else is secondary. Why? Because they feel as though that they've made their big concessions already by settling for 22% of what they regard as historic Palestine, which is the current nation of Israel. The more I speak to Palestinians, the more I understand that the real issue for them is the existence of the State of Israel that came about in 1948 and not 1967, he said. It's clear to me that if the agreement with the Palestinians does not include recognition of Israel as a Jewish state, it is not worth the paper that it is written on. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry met with Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas in an attempt to prevent the negotiating process from falling apart. While Abbas and Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu are busy blaming each other for the failure of the talks, the tireless Kerry is searching for a creative solution to the issue, specifically with regard to the possible release of Israeli Arab prisoners. UN Special Coordinator for the Middle East, Robert Sari, said that March the 29th, which is the original date that was scheduled for the fourth and final round of Palestinian prisoners, is of immediate concern, much, much more urgent than the April 29th deadline, the date when negotiations between Israel and the Palestinians are supposed to come to an end. If a solution to this issue is not found in the coming days, it is unlikely that it will be possible to complete the 9 months of talks. I hope that in the end, Kerry will offer a framework consistent with the relevant UN resolutions and the U.S. roadmap. In my view, it is important for both sides to continue negotiations on that basis. If the political process succeeds, we need to think how much we can gain. The alternative to two states seems particularly bad. Meanwhile, Israel told the Palestinians that it will not free the final batch of Palestinian prisoners initially expected to have been released on March the 29th. Israel Justice Minister and Chief Negotiator in the peace process, Tzipi Livni, said that there never was an automatic commitment to release additional Palestinian prisoners without receiving something of value in return. The prisoner issue will be resolved within a few days, when it will be closed or the whole thing will blow up, Netanyahu said. Any deal involving a further prisoner release would be brought to the government for approval. Netanyahu added and said the deliberations around the prisoner release could go on for several days. In addition, Israel made a proposal to the Palestinians that they hope will lead to an extension of their peace talks beyond an April 29th deadline. According to a Palestinian official, Israel presented Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas with a draft agreement to relaunch talks. Abbas was ready to examine the proposal during the night, he said. Israel offered to release a new group of 400 Palestinian security prisoners in addition to the fourth and final group of long-time terrorist convicts who were set to go free on March the 29th. If the Palestinian Authority agrees to extend peace talks for another 6 months. Israel is said to be holding close to 5,000 Palestinian security prisoners. Some sources claimed that Israel was holding off on freeing the prisoners because of rumors that the Palestinian Authority would back out of peace talks once the fourth round of convicts are released. The United States is demanding that Israel show flexibility and has raised several options to do, among them a gesture. Release of prisoners who have been imprisoned for a very long time, or those who are similar to other prisoners previously freed. At present, it is still unclear how many Palestinian prisoners would be included in such a gesture. Furthermore, imprisoned Israeli spy Jonathan Pollard may be released from American incarceration as part of a deal being negotiated by the United States to release Palestinian prisoners and extend peace talks. According to the report, Pollard could be released by the middle of April in return for Israel releasing a final wave of 27 prisoners from its jails. Further, Israel would release an additional batch of detainees and peace talks would be extended past the April 29th deadline agreed to in July. Pollard, a U.S. naval analyst, was imprisoned by the United States in 1987 after being caught spying for Israel. Successive Israeli governments have lobbied the United States for his release without any success. He is due to be paroled in 2015. The Palestinians rejected an Israeli proposal to extend the crumbling peace talks beyond the April 29th deadline, saying that it was like blackmail. Israel is practicing a policy of blackmail and linking its agreements to releasing the fourth batch of prisoners, with the Palestinians accepting to extend the peace negotiations, the official said, following a meeting between the two sides and U.S. Special Envoy Martin Indyk. The Israeli proposal included a partial settlement freeze, but not in East Jerusalem or for tenders already launched, the sources said. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas refuses to discuss the U.S. framework accord for the continuation of peace talks with Israel until the fourth and final round of Palestinian prisoners are released. A Palestinian source said if the releases of Palestinian prisoners do not go ahead as scheduled, that Palestinian leaders are threatening to renew the diplomatic push at the United Nations. In any event, the Palestinian leadership presented an offer to American mediators that Israel release 1,000 more prisoners of the Palestinian Authority's choosing, and in exchange, peace talks would be extended until the end of 2014. Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas also demanded that Israel freeze settlement construction and transfer some Area C lands to full Palestinian control. The United States cannot stop a Palestinian campaign to the United Nations for statehood should peace talks with Israel fail, American diplomats said. An editorial published in the New York Times warned Abbas and Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to think carefully before they pass up this opportunity for peace, because they will have to shoulder the blame should the talks fail. If the two sides can't reach an agreement on a framework to continue talks, the United States should stick to its principles by setting the borders according to the 1967 lines and recognizing Jerusalem as the joint capital of both states, the Times editorial said. So now, a summary of this week's major news events is as follows. The Arab League refused to recognize Israel as a Jewish state. Israel decided to not go ahead on the fourth and final round of the release of Palestinian prisoners scheduled for March the 29th. Israel is concerned that the Palestinians will accept the release of the prisoners, yet fail to continue the peace talks. In order to try to extend peace talks, Israel made a proposal to the Palestinians offering the release of a new group of 400 Palestinian security prisoners if the Palestinians would agree to extend peace talks for at least another 6 months. However, the Palestinians rejected this idea. As a part of the current negotiations regarding the extension of peace talks beyond April the 29th, the United States is discussing the possibility of releasing Israeli spy Jonathan Pollard. However, the Palestinians rejected the Israeli proposal, calling it blackmail. The Palestinians said that they will only agree to extend the peace talks if Israel releases at least 1,000 more prisoners in order for peace talks to be extended through the end of 2014. The Palestinian proposal also included a demand that Israel freeze settlement construction and the transfer of some of Area C in the West Bank to become under total Palestinian Authority control. If Israel doesn't agree to the Palestinian demands, they have threatened to join various United Nations agencies. If peace talks do collapse, the United States has said that it cannot stop a Palestinian campaign for statehood at the United Nations. Well, that's going to conclude this week's report, where we shared with you regarding the current status of the Israeli-Palestinian peace process. Until we do it again, Shalom, in Yeshua the Messiah, Amen.